Investigation into disgraced National Party MP Andrew Falloon didn't meet the threshold for prosecution. But police say they're now aware of further allegations and are appealing for anyone with information to come forward. Rangitata MP has today quit Parliament, effective immediately, in the face of growing claims he sent unsolicited pornographic material to more than one woman. His own party leader, Judith Collins, expressed no confidence in him after initially saying Andrew Falloon was suffering from significant mental health issues. The police investigated the complaint at the beginning of July, but didn't take it further because of a lack of evidence. So what's needed to meet the level for prosecution? Employment and technology specialist Lawyer Gareth Abdinor explains.
I have read some of the headlines regarding the allegations, and what I understand has been alleged could be captured by the Harmful Digital Communications Act. Now, that act covers all sorts of digital communications, including emails, text messages, websites, social media posts. It's really very broad. And that Act sets out 10 principles that would capture explicit content. And it essentially prohibits any digital communications that are grossly offensive, indecent or obscene, that would be grossly offensive to a reasonable person, anything that's threatening. So that's most likely what has been triggered here.
What happens if a pornographic image is taken with consent, so consent between two people, but then it is distributed to a third party?
Yeah, and that's unfortunately what society is having to deal with all the time now. As a first point, I would say, as soon as something is digitised, you lose control over it. So if you have a situation where there is consent between two people, an image is created, the problem with that is it is almost impossible to control that digital image. And it can be accessed without authorisation, for example, by hackers. And we've had very highly publicised cases where celebrities' digital storage accounts have been hacked, and pictures that they created for their partners have been accessed and shared widely on these video sharing platforms. But even if we don't look at hackers, if you consent to someone taking an image just to be shared between the two of you and then they share it with a third party, potentially you've got breach of the Harmful Digital Communications Act, and you've also most likely got a breach of privacy as well.
So in legislation, what is the threshold for something that's considered grossly offensive or indecent? Is nudity or pictures of genitalia alone enough to reach that threshold?
Well, that's a fantastic question, Lisa, and there has been a lot of discussion about this. There's a very famous quote from a court case in the United States where they were dealing with pornography, and the judge says it's very difficult to define, but you know it when you see it. This is something that Facebook and other social media outlets are really struggling with. They are blanking out artworks, ancient Greek art, ancient Roman art, because there's nudity, when clearly that's not pornographic, and perhaps struggling with things that are pornographic. It's very difficult to say what is going to be pornographic and what isn't. But most of the cases I'm aware of where this has come before the courts, it is quite obvious. And it often falls into that category of revenge porn, where someone has obtained an image with consent, and then after a relationship breaks down, they share that image with the express purpose of hurting or embarrassing the other party.
In the case of Andrew Falloon, the police have acknowledged that they conducted an investigation after an initial complaint regarding an offensive unsolicited image. The matter was not taken further because they say it didn't meet the evidential threshold. Where is that threshold? How much evidence and what do you need in order to pursue a prosecution?
It's so difficult to comment on individual cases like this, Lisa, because we never have all of the facts. Without knowing exactly what was in the image, what exactly the circumstances were when the image was shared, it's almost impossible to provide a meaningful comment to that. But it is always the circumstances that are really important. There's a huge difference between two consenting people willingly sharing risque electronic messages and someone potentially in a position of power sending unsolicited images with someone significantly younger or more junior. So that may well be why the police are involved.
The police have said today that they're appealing for anyone else to come forward if they have a complaint and that they've become aware of other allegations in this matter. What would they be looking for?
Well, not to speak for the police, I imagine they would be looking for a pattern of behaviour. Certainly if something has happened many times or there's a suggestion that a position of power has been misused numerous times, it may suggest that other behaviour has taken place. Very difficult to say.
Is there any space under this legislation to take a defence of mental illness? Well,
I'm not sure if I would put it into the category of a defence, but if there is mental illness, that is always a relevant factor. And I would be surprised if that wasn't considered both by the police and if this matter ever got to the point of prosecution by the court.
Would you say the same with regards to alcohol?
Well, I guess that's a defence that is often used by people, or often tried to be used by people with varying levels of success.
So how well tested is this legislation, Gareth?
When it first came out in 2015, we expected there to be floodgates, and because it is so wide-ranging and captures so much communication, I often think that when people start using social media or emails or text messages, they turn off part of their brain, that kind of judgment side of the brain, and sometimes do things that they wouldn't do in person. That doesn't seem to have been the case. While there have been some prosecutions, most of those fall into cases that clearly would have been criminal behaviour before this was brought into law. If nothing else, I think the Act has been really useful in educating people to think twice. Think twice before you make an explicit image and then share it online.
And that was Gareth Abdinor there, and police declined our request for an interview tonight.